See, the reality of the situation is, it doesn't matter how good your lumber is, if you don't know how to start the fire, it won't help you. So in this video, we're going to be talking about my favorite ways to start a fire. So here are my top 5 methods for getting a fire going, starting with the simplest and ending with the most complicated. Before we go through all 5 methods, I want to talk quickly about prep for your fire. Once you have your ignition source ready to go, you want to make sure that you have fuel to actually put on the fire so that you can successfully do whatever you need with it, whether that's cooking your food, purifying water, or just staying warm. The first thing you're going to need is some kind of tinder source. This can be a group of feather sticks. This can be some dried grass. It can be some cattail fluff. It can even be a man-made tinder like cotton balls dipped in Vaseline. Then you're going to want to have some small twigs. Now these are going to be really helpful to throw on the fire right away. I would suggest collect a bundle about this thick of all these dried twigs. This way you can throw those right on the tinder, get some fuel in there right away. But you don't want to throw anything big on there or it might snuff out very quickly. Then you're going to want to have some slightly larger pieces, ones that would require you to break them on your knee. And these ones are going to be tossed on top of that. You can also use them as a fire brace if you need to, kind of prop up your pieces. Then you get into a slightly larger fuel source once your fire is ignited and ready to go. And then finally, you're going to want some nice big pieces that you actually have to split. Those ones are going to make sure that you have actual fuel sources for your fire so it continues burning throughout the night, if it's to keep you warm or to create a nice bed of coals so that you can cook over it. So once you have all these gathered up, then we can start actually jumping into the ignition. My all-time favorite ignition source, a Bic lighter. It's super simple, very easy to carry. I always have one with me, whether I'm at work, just having one in my pocket or one in my bag. Always have one. Easy fire. If you're in an emergency situation, you don't want to be messing around with some of those more primitive fire starting methods. Number one, have a Bic lighter. When I was in survival training, nothing beat having that source of fire early in the morning when you want to get your fire going and it's cold outside and your hands aren't working great because you just woke up. Bic lighter. And it will light pretty much anything. If you've got a Bic lighter and you've got some dried twigs, you don't need a tinder source. You can just grab it, light your twigs on fire and get going that way. Now matches are also a great ignition source, and actually I put these right next to lighters as far as the easiest to get fires going. The difference is you get a very limited burn time when compared to a lighter, and they're very easily blown out unless you get something like a stormproof match. So if you're going to use matches to start fires, make sure you've got stormproof matches. They do make a huge difference in that they'll continue burning even in wind and rain, and if you dunk them in water, pull them out, not that you would in a survival situation, they're going to keep burning. So I like to have those, and I bundle them into a lighter as far as fire starting goes. Number 2 should come as no surprise. I'm a fan of Ferrocerium rods. Now these come in all different shapes and sizes, but ultimately they all use the same method. You're going to take a sharpened piece of metal, usually the spine of your knife or some kind of dedicated striker. By striking along the edge of the Ferrocerium rod, you create extremely hot sparks. And those, as long as you've got a good ignition source, will light pretty much anything. And the great thing about Ferrocerium rods is they work whether it's raining or sunny or cold or warm. It doesn't matter. They create sparks that are hot enough to get pretty much any tinder source lit. There is some skill required, which is why they're not the number 1 on my list, but I will always have at least one Ferrocerium rod in my backpack, and I often carry an extra one in there, usually something large strapped in there, and then a smaller one as a backup. So my third favorite way to start a fire is using a traditional flint and steel. Now this is a piece of, I think, chert, but any sharp rock, any hard and sharp rock should do. I've used quartz, I've used traditional flint, I've used some chert. Basically, it's just got to be hard enough that when you strike a piece of carbon steel, it creates sparks. And so if you want to test it, I would grab yourself a nice steel, something that you know throws some good sparks, and then just go out there and test it. And if it's throwing sparks, you know you've got a nice hard rock, and then throw it in your backpack. I've got a whole collection of nice hard rocks that throw good sparks. These take quite a bit more skill than a Ferrocerium rod, but it's under the same principle. You're creating a spark, but you're gonna need a tinder source as well as some kind of charred material. Now there are some flash fire sources like milkweed fluff and cattail fluff that you can often land a spark and get them lit, but easiest is to have a tinder box. If you're traditional enough to carry on a flint and striker, go ahead and carry yourself some char cloth. And this is just a tin full of punk wood that I've charred up. Probably needs to be recharred. And then I also have a little bag of char cloth. But the basic method, you strike this, it's gonna heat up, and then you place this into your tinder bundle and blow that into an actual flame. And then you throw on your feathers, you throw on your fuel, and you get your fire going that way. So it's a little bit more of a method to get it going, but it sure is a lot of fun. So the fourth method of fire starting that I enjoy takes a little bit more skill and a little bit better planning, and that is using an actual magnifying glass and directing the heat from the sun into a tinder source. Now the sun has gotten a little bit too low in the sky that this is not going to work. This only really works when the sun is nice and high in the sky and you don't have any cloud cover. But it's really fun, really impressive, and it doesn't use any fuel source. All you use is heat from the sun. Just like when we were kids, you can focus that sunlight into a bundle of dried leaves or grasses and get the fire going that way. So that's a really fun way to get a fire going. Doesn't use any of your other ignition sources, and it's pretty impressive, especially if you do it with your friends. Now this is a dedicated magnifying glass that I bought specifically for fire making many years ago. And then I have a pair of binocular lenses that I pulled out once a pair of binoculars that I had broke. And these will work as well. But yeah, simple, fun. Now this isn't the most reliable, like I said, so this is more of a, in my mind, one of the more gimmicky fire starting, just like a fire piston. It's not always going to be perfectly reliable. It does take a little bit more skill, and the conditions have to be perfect for this to work. And the fifth and final method for firecraft that I enjoy quite a bit is friction fire. Now bow drill is pretty much my favorite. I've gotten a hand drill fire going once, but it required quite a bit of help and my hands were burning by the end. Not from heat, but from friction. It's miserable. Bow drill is a lot more fun, and I recommend everybody practice it and try it out. But the basic concept is you're gonna get some dry wood. This is actual cedar that I bought at the store, dried out as fence posting, split it down so I could make some spindles, and I could make a board. Now this video is not a tutorial on bow drill. There are plenty of those on the internet, and also I will likely make one in the future, but I'll run through it really quickly. You're basically drilling into the piece of wood, creating dust off of either your hearth board or your spindle, and then through friction you're heating it enough so that it actually starts smoking and creates an ember. You then can tip that ember into a tinder bundle of some source, and then from there, just like with the flint and steel, you blow that into flame. It's a much more challenging process. This is a high-level skill that you have to dedicate quite a bit of time and quite a bit of practice into learning. Study up, learn how to do this. Super fun. Not your most reliable and definitely your most challenging. It does exhaust you, so I would never rely on this as a survival skill, but knowing that you could use this technique, let's say you forgot your lighter, or you drop your ferro rod and lose it, or you're out in the wilderness and you really need a fire going, at least you know you have something that you can use, natural materials, and get something going. So it's a good skill to have, and I recommend you learn it, but definitely don't rely on it. Have your other fire starting methods just in case. So what are your favorite fire starting methods? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.